Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Freemasonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. I'm your host, Brother Robert Johnson. This is episode 180. In the news this week, I just wanted to mention that it has been one whole year of the Masonic Roundtable. We are going to celebrate episode 53 this upcoming week. It's going to be fantastic. There's not going to be a real rhyme or reason to that episode. It's just going to be the fellas, you guys, and interaction on both sides, having fun that night. And we'll talk Masonry, we'll talk what's fun, we'll talk about all kinds of crazy cool stuff. So I really hope you guys participate. I think Nick Johnson is organizing kind of an Ask Me Anything deal for the Masonic Roundtable. They're going to have on either Reddit or on Facebook. I really hope you guys participate. It should be a good time. Secondly, I did want to mention, if you saw my Matchbox Lodge and you liked it, I'll make one for you and ship it to you, but not for free. We have to trade for something. So either a pin or a Masonic thing. I love knickknacks, Masonic antiques, odds and ends that are Masonic, right? So if that sounds agreeable to you, shoot me an email at wcypodcast@gmail.com or shoot me a message on Facebook and I will make for you a small Matchbox Lodge. If you don't know what it looks like, go ahead and check out the video on Vimeo under a video channel, WCY Podcast, or you can check out the video on Facebook. And I believe it even went out on Twitter. So check that out. The initial photograph went out, but I decided to make it even more intricate. So check out the video to see the whole thing. Again, I will trade you one for something. We have a cool paper this week, as well as a special short interview with Brother Aaron Gardner, fellow Midnight Freemason and blogger at Celestial Brotherhood, to talk about a charity he is launching, and he needs our help. And also, Brother Matt Chojnacki is going to join us for a new Esoteric Freemason Minute as well, so stay tuned. I also wanted to ask about how many of you watched the Sons of Liberty show on H2. How did you like it so far? I was pretty entertained. There were quite a bit of inaccuracies, but again, I thought it was good. Let me know what you guys thought on the Facebook page. So the paper for this week is called The Restaurant at the End of the Masonic Universe by Stephen Defoe. So there is this restaurant chain with locations throughout North America. Its slogan is a pretty catchy one, and the chain's management uses it on a daily basis to motivate staff and to recruit new patrons to the chain's thousands of locations. The slogan is, "We take good food and make it better." 8 simple words which have struck an emotional chord with millions of people who like to eat. There is no marketing genius behind the slogan or the success of the same in attracting people to the restaurant chain. Everyone likes good food, so it is unlikely that there is a person alive who would not like good food made better. Who could resist such a slogan? Sadly, the restaurant chain seldom lives up to its own slogan. The restaurants are often poorly decorated, their tables and chairs wobbly and in need of repair. Staff often quarrel with one another, and the management too often seem only to be concerned with climbing the corporate ladder to the head office. The food, so much talked about, is bland at best and dreadful at worst. Yet as each new patron comes in for the first time to sample this quote-unquote good food made better, he sees a group of smiling faces all lapping up the meal as if it was the greatest food on the planet, just like the advertising people said it was. The new patron does his best to eat his meal, even though the food offered does not appeal to the palate as sweetly as the words used to describe it, not wishing to show his displeasure to his 2 friends who sponsored him, for it is, after all, an exclusive restaurant. He sits in silence, eating his meal, with each mouthful being as forced as the smile on his face. Sometimes the patron simply pays his tab, leaves the restaurant, and vows never to return to the establishment. However, sometimes the patron decides that maybe he just went on a bad night. Perhaps the staff was having a bad day because the regular cook was away. Perhaps those people enjoying the meal were just being kind and did not want to offend the new cook. He decides to give the quote-unquote good food made better joint one more try. Returning on another night, he sees the same dozen patrons who were there the month previous. They are still arguing with one another about which fork you should use for the salad and the proper way to hold a wine glass. The manager is still ignoring the new customers in favor of the company of higher-ups seated at the back table, who he is trying to convince of his suitability for a more prominent position in the firm. What's worse, the food is still bland, boring, and not what the sign on the door proclaims. Yet the regulars are still lapping it up like it's their last meal. This time, the patron decides that the marketing slogan is nothing more than 8 simple words cleverly arranged to deprive him of his hard-earned money. The thought occurs to him that maybe he could pull the manager away from the corporate wheels long enough to suggest a few small things that could truly make the good food better. However, he has a sinking feeling that he would be told, quote, "But we've always cooked it this way before," or "We tried that once and the patrons didn't like it." He feels he might even be told that the head office would never allow it. So instead of voicing his concerns, exercising the old business axiom that the customer is always right, he says nothing. Instead, he leaves the restaurant and vows never to return, either canceling his pre-booked reservations on the way out the door or never returning and having his membership canceled by the chain via a nasty letter. He wonders how it is that the restaurant survives and why the same dozen diners seem to enjoy this food so much. His conclusion is a simple one. They like the things the way they are, and the establishment will never change so long as the chain is run by people who like to make bland food and patronized by people who like to eat the same. And so we come to a problem that is rife within Freemasonry today. We advertise ourselves as an organization that makes good men better. And while that is precisely what we have done for millions of men over the centuries, it cannot be argued that we are letting down the many young men who enter our doors, who feel cheated and deceived. "I really feel that I have been sold a pack of lies," direct quote, wrote one such young Mason recently on an internet discussion forum. How sad it is that a young man who has been a Mason for 1 year would feel that he has been lied to by an organization that has truth as one of its 3 greatest attributes. "This is not the Masonry I signed up for," he continued in his posting, and in so stating arrives at the crux of our problem. Freemasonry in large parts of the United States and Canada is not offering what it is advertising, but if it advertised what it offered, would it receive many new candidates? Freemasonry, we take good men and let them sit in a room and listen to the reading of minutes and 45-minute debates on spending $50 on why we should or should not buy a plaque to show what great guys we are. It just does not have the same marketing strength as Freemasonry. We take good men and make them better. Unfortunately, our young brethren, past and present, have tried to improve what Freemasonry offers within the tiled recesses of our lodges, but are met with resistance at each step of the way. We say we are about making good men better through self-improvement, yet few are the lodges who apply the working tools within the body of a lodge to educate our young members as to how to do this. The Masonic Information Center, MIC, recently released a publication entitled "It's About Time." The publication identifies the problems currently confronting Masonic identity and offers sound solutions for the same. One of the most powerful statements in the 17-page document is as follows, quote, "The square encompasses the best-known symbol of a Mason, cannot replace the identity of living the life of a Mason, which is itself perpetually in a state of improving ourselves in body, mind, and spirit. Masonic imagery is a valuable resource when it inspires us to take new action consistent with our personal growth and enlightened thought. We must discover our own Masonic calling, our own place in the history of Masonry, by making authentic Masonic performance our top priority." End quote. However, we have allowed, as the MIC points out in this publication, Masonry to be shaped by the 20th century's emphasis on the Masonic ritual being the completion of the Mason's education about his fraternity. Like the analogy of the restaurant chain, little changes in how lodges deliver Masonic lessons because the same dozen patrons sit in the seats and run the show. Those men, like the restaurant patrons in our analogy, come back month after month and year after year because they enjoy the bland food, a meal that is largely comprised of recitation of minutes, tedious debates over how funds are dispersed, and arguments over when and how to salute the worshipful master. And when a young man, initiated, passed, and raised, leaves because he finds the meal unappetizing, he is viewed as a disgruntled customer, which the restaurant is better off without. The recipe of Freemasonry is as sound today as it was 300 years ago. It is the present kitchen of stubborn cooks who need to be tossed out. Source, Knights of the North Masonic Dictionary. Alright, now comes the point in the show where I would like to ask you to support the show. You can support the show several different ways, first and foremost being our applications available through the Android store on the Windows phone, or if you go onto the Apple App Store, you can download the Podcast Box application, and then you get the Whence Came You app within that. What do you get for that? Well, you get access to the papers that we read on the show. In addition, you will get access to a weekly Masonic wallpaper for your mobile device, and on occasion videos or other little clips and things. Another way you can support this show is through shopping. So we have a few different ways and places you can do some shopping. One, of course, is Onnit.com, who has been with us for quite some time now, and they've been very good to us. You head on over to Onnit.com and you can buy any number of healthy living supplements, workout equipment, CrossFit stuff, all good stuff to keep your mind and body healthy. If you use the coupon code WCY at checkout, you will get 10% off your purchase, and they will send a little bit back to this show to keep us funded. Another agreement we have is through FreemasonryArt.com, run by our friend and brother Juan Sepulveda of the Winding Stairs podcast. Brother Juan Sepulveda is a fine artist. He runs FreemasonryArt.com. He has a multitude of amazing products and prints. Currently, my favorite is his print called Rhetoric. I urge you to check that out. If you use the coupon code WCY, you will also get 10% off, and Brother Juan will support this show with a small donation. So something else that I'm really excited about right now is we have a new sponsor to the show, and this is FreemasonTees.com. Freemason Tees is a great place to go for really cool Masonic t-shirts. You can go to www.freemasontees.com. That's FreemasonTees.com. They do shirts and decals. They can do custom shirts for lodges, fundraisers, etc. And they are for brothers by brothers. Right? So if you use the coupon code WCY there, you'll save 10%, and he is donating 10% of the sales from that promo code to support this show also. So a huge thanks to FreemasonTees.com. Check them out as soon as you can. There'll be links to that in the show notes and also on the support the show page. And next, we're going to go into a short interview that I did with Brother Aaron Gardner from the Celestial Brotherhood blog, as well as he's a regular contributor to the Midnight Freemasons. So we'll go into that right now. All right, guys, thanks for coming out and listening to the show this evening. Every once in a while, we get a minute to have somebody on who is just an incredible individual. So this evening, we were lucky enough to spend a few minutes here with Brother Aaron Gardner, who, as you know, has his own blog, Celestial Brotherhood, where he has his own opinions on Masonry, and it's a phenomenal blog. And every once in a while, he will write for the Midnight Freemasons as well as a regular contributor. So just want to say thanks for coming on the show there, Aaron.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So one of the main reasons Aaron is on the show this week is he has a wonderful new charity that he has gotten really serious about. Aaron, you want to tell us a little bit about what's the name of the charity?
It's called Brothers in Aprons for Brothers in Arms.
Interesting. So as we talked about this, Brothers in Aprons for Brothers in Arms deals with the issues of veterans who are homeless. What would you say the percentage is in populations of veterans who are homeless?
Well, out of all the homeless that we have in the United States, it's about 12% that are veterans.
Wow, pretty incredible considering the gift they gave to the country, and they're on the streets. So the statistic is about 12,700 homeless veterans have served. And what are the organizations? I noticed you have Operation New Dawn in Iraq and some other things going on there.
The Operation New Dawn, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Iraqi Freedom, out of that 12% of homeless vets, about 12,000 of those homeless veterans served in those conflicts, operations.
So Aaron, you're trying to raise this money, and where is the money for the program going to go?
Well, there's a lot of controversy with the Veterans Affairs. So I wanted to try to put money towards other organizations that are not directly affiliated with the Veterans Affairs. There's plenty of programs out there that I call them ground pounders, and they're the ones that do stand downs, which they walk out and they try to find these veterans and they try to offer them some way to get help, whether it's through counseling for PTSD, or if they're homeless, trying to get them to get some place where they can stay and eat and survive.
Right on. One of the goals that you have, it says to have every lodge and Brother Mason offer some sort of help for the cause, either by putting a spare change hat in the lodge or something along those lines. What's your goal to meet here? What's the dollar amount you want to raise, and when are you looking to get that done by?
Well, my goal is for $100,000 by the end of the year.
So $100,000 by December 31st, 2015. It's a very ambitious goal. However, we all know that Masons give. That's what we do. And where can people donate for this?
There's two ways of finding this website. The first one is it's through a website called Give It Forward, or Give Forward. It's giveforward.com, Brothers in Aprons for Brothers in Arms.
I know you have a Facebook group for this as well, which is www.facebook.com/brosinAprons, the number 4, Bros in Arms. It's going to go a long way. I think we can do something with this, and we get a little something extra for every $100 raised. Why don't you tell us about that, brother?
So for every $100 that comes through the Give Forward program, I'm going to run a mile. And if you like the Facebook page and you follow it, you'll get to watch through the Nike Plus app my mile where I ran, wherever I was at, and I'll even record videos of my running.
Excellent, excellent. So just a huge thanks to Brother Aaron for putting this together. We know it's going to be a fantastic fundraiser. I urge you all to check it out. We're going to have links to everything in the show notes. We're going to have links to the Facebook page, and of course we'll be posting along the way as we see interesting updates on the WCY side from Bros in Aprons for Brothers in Arms. We're going to post those updates and keep everybody who keeps tabs on the Whence Came You page. You're not going to have a choice. You're going to know what's going on with Brothers in Aprons for Brothers in Arms. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Hey, thank you.
All right, and you will find links to the charity from Aaron Gardner in the show notes, and I urge you to check that out ASAP. Let's make Aaron Gardner run 1,000,000 miles. Next is a segment that I know you guys are all excited about. It's the Esoteric Freemason Minute with Brother Matt Chojnacki. So we'll take it away right now.
Welcome back to the Esoteric Freemasonry Minute with Brother Matt, recorded tonight in my local lodge. Although, to imply that today's episode is only a minute would be to lie, because this episode ended up much longer than expected, and yet still shorter than I'd like it to be. Before I begin tonight, I would like to apologize for missing the deadline for my segment. That is not something that will happen often. 2 Wednesdays ago started a chain of events that have been hindering me from all of the work that I need to do. On Wednesday, January 21st, Mercury entered retrograde, and since then, the whole Earth is being flooded with certain energies. Mercury retrogrades aren't rare, but year by year they become more noticeable and pronounced. I have seen it act on hundreds of people and seen how it has made them more irritable or easily frustrated or backslidden or just generally imbalanced during these trials. This retrograde is a period of time that works to help correct old bad habits and thought patterns by making them rise to the top like dross in the purification of silver before being cleansed. Be ready to forgive people easily, for they know not what they do. They don't always realize what they are saying nor the impact of their words. Use this time to refine yourself and to address issues that have come up that you thought you had conquered. And have hope, because this too shall pass, and the trials we go through today are seriously shaping us for tomorrow. No matter what happens and what you have done or will end up doing or had done to you, don't forget to love. This retrograde that lasts from January 21st through February 11th is a mechanism of the clockwork of the heavens, and it is being used to help us learn how to love and to correct our mistakes. So learn them now, before the next retrograde comes, or there could be worse consequences at future Mercury retrogrades. Learn your lessons today and now. Don't put them off. Also, before we start today, I would like to address 2 things briefly. First off, I would just like to mention that I don't actually talk as fast as the last episode made it sound, and that moments of breathing were cut out to make the show cleaner and shorter. Secondly, I want to state that on this show, including the last episode and all future ones, I may have plagiarized or rewritten sentences, and I'm not ashamed of it. More than 95% of the words spoken are my own, but I will often intertwine phrasings and wordings from scriptures, rituals, books, or blogs, and not slow down to credit the authors. Sometimes there are authors who phrase things perfectly, and I'd rather work with it and Tarantino their words instead of spending too much time worrying about original phrasing. This show is about truth and not complete originality, so do not worry if you may recognize phrases or sentences from various sources. I would also like to thank you all for the positive feedback I've received, and I also want to thank Brother Robert Johnson for this excellent opportunity to refine my speaking and presentation skills, which is helping me smooth my ashlar and expand my knowledge base. Today's episode is going to be on a subject that is not often deeply explored within Masonic symbolism, yet is vital to understanding the system. The topic of today's show is the symbol of Noah, the flood, and the ark. There are many levels of interpretation to this story, and I will touch on most of them today, but unfortunately do not have the time to expound too deeply. So I ask that you take this episode as a teaser trailer for the deeper knowledge and comprehension of the story of Noah, and use the points that I touch on as breadcrumbs to follow into more profound truths. Even though it is often overlooked as a Masonic symbol, the story of Noah is an important part of the puzzle of Masonic symbolism. Mackey says in his ubiquitous encyclopedia that it is necessary, therefore, that every scholar who desires to investigate the legendary symbolism of Freemasonry should make himself acquainted with the Noahic myths upon which much of it is founded. He also said, so intimately were incorporated the legends of Noah with the legends of Masonry that Freemasons began, at length, to be called, and are still called, Noahide, or the descendants of Noah, a term first applied by Anderson and very frequently used at the present day. He also said that this term, Noahide, applied to Freemasons on the theory derived from the legend of the craft, that Noah was the father and founder of the Masonic system of theology. Hence the Freemasons claim to be his descendants, because in time past they preserved the pure principles of his religion amid the corruption of surrounding faiths. So here we see that the study of Noah is important according to Masonic authorities, which comes as no surprise to us, because the symbol of the ark and anchor are one of the 9 classes of emblems in the Master Mason degree, and the development of the degrees once included the story of Noah before getting replaced and upgraded with the Hiramic legend. Noah has long been part of Masonry, even before the mystics and philosophers hijacked operative symbols for more noble and glorious purposes. For the earliest records of the history of Masonry given in their initiatic lectures to the operatives included the history of Noah. To begin looking at the Noahic symbolism, let us first examine it on the exoteric level before moving on deeper. Was there an actual man and a flood that wiped out the earth? Some over-spiritualists say no, but that is because their views are based upon books that are many, many years old that were not written with the same arsenal of evidence that we have uncovered in the recent years. There was a cataclysmic event to which the beginning chapters of Genesis refers to, and there have been hundreds of records and hundreds of cultures that support the story of the deluge. China has an unbroken record of history that goes back 5,000 years, that, at the beginning, recorded the events of the past, and includes that there was a worldwide flood many, many years before the official records began. Evidence of the flood can be found on multiple continents, from the ruins of Sumeria, to the lands of Egypt, and their ancient water-damaged stones, to the hieroglyphs and a type of erosion found in South America. The Book of Genesis, or in Hebrew called Bereshit, is an abridged allegorical retelling of ancient events, and the Great Flood really happened many thousands of years before it is recorded as happening. The Bible gives us a few clues to this time distortion, most notably when the Torah provides 2 different times between the books of Genesis and Exodus. Some parts say 400 years and some passages say 430 years elapsed between the two. One of the reasons for this discrepancy of time frames, besides the implications of gematria, is the fact that neither 400 nor 430 is true, and that the 400-430 spot is the link in the chain between the ancient history and the beginning of the Judaic tale. Thousands of years elapsed between the end of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus. This means that the Bible tells us in code that the events of the book of Genesis are far older than recorded. The flood of Noah actually happened around 12,000 years ago, and it played out much differently than we are told. Graham Hancock has some resources that can help prove the happening of the deluge, such as his mentions of the underwater pyramids of Japan, or his misinterpreted evidence of water erosion on the Sphinx that he says was from rainfall over the past 38,000 years. When, in reality, this erosion is proof of Earth's submersion underwater within this last cycle of the astrological ages. This flood happened during the Age of Cancer, which is recorded in an offset in the ancient temple of Hathor in the Dendera zodiac engraving between Leo and Cancer, which shows that there is a cataclysmic event during the Age of Cancer that offset the tilt and rotation of the Earth. This was the asteroid impact that triggered the Great Flood. Before this deluge, the Earth lived in a different dynamic. It had a different tilt and rotation and axis, and it took much longer than the current 2,000 somewhat years to progress through the astrological ages. We were also in a hyperbaric chamber, which means that the air pressure was increased, estimated to be at about 1.4 or 1.5 times as much as it is now. There is proof in nature that fruits and vegetables once grew larger in higher pressure environments, and that the human body is much more healthy and self-repairing in hyperbaric chambers. This higher pressure environment is because there are waters in the sky that are no longer there. The possibility of a layer of water floating above Earth has been proven by modern experiments, including the launch of NASA rockets that leave frozen water particles perpetually floating in the atmosphere that gather together and create a thin layer of moisture. The current scientific aging of this Earth is incorrect because it does not account for this hyperbaric environment, and it writes off many of the anomalies and evidences found as remnants of the Ice Age. This will be more fully elaborated at a future time, but for now I will just leave it as saying that there is an abundance of evidence and scientific proof that the Earth was once a hyperbaric chamber because of the waters that resided in the sky. It was an asteroid impact that pierced these waters and hit the ground beneath, shaking it up to release the waters of the deep. All of this happened over the Atlantic, and the huge hole in the atmosphere over the Atlantic Ocean that global warming enthusiasts have talked about for years and blamed on man-made forces has existed since before we started measuring the atmosphere. Yes, our actions have weakened this hole in the atmosphere, but it did not originate with us, but rather it was a remnant of the triggering of the deluge. The waters above broke forth and poured down for many days when an asteroid pierced the atmosphere and caused the waters below to spew, which is observable by that huge crack at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. There is a plethora of evidence of sunken civilization on all sides of the world, from the Great Sphinx of Egypt to the sunken pyramids of Japan, even to the Bermuda Triangle mystery, which is a result of a sunken power plant from Atlantean times. There is a ton of evidence in nature, archaeology, and historical records for this ancient deluge, although it did not happen as we are told, but it did happen nonetheless. Unfortunately, there hasn't been a proper compilation of the evidence, nor properly funded expeditions that would uncover more evidence that we already know of. There was an advanced civilization which used almost unbelievable technology that lived on Earth for tens of thousands of years before being destroyed because of their wickedness. Today we know this civilization as Atlantis, although that is just our modern corrupted understanding of it, such as the message that the receiver gets in that telephone game where a message passes through time and people and becomes corrupted. Atlantis was an island nation stationed in what is now known as the Atlantic Ocean, which was then a much larger lake at the center of Pangaea. This unified landmass had a great lake with many islands in the middle, and it was wiped clean by an event so cataclysmic that it pushed the continents away from each other. Some of the islands were natural, some were artificial, and some even descended upon the waters. Noah was not the only survivor of this flood, and the mistake of many historians is to merge all of the stories of a worldwide flood into a single story. There were multiple survivors in multiple parts of the earth, and the Great Light alludes to this when it says that the sons of Elohim, who were beings that were separate from Noah, were on the earth in those days and also after. There is no way that all this genetic diversity could have arisen from just one family that interbred a few thousand years ago. They did spread to all the earth, but they were not alone, and soon different groups intermarried and mingled together and became new, individualized groups long before the history books began. Many of the other stories are allegorical retellings not meant to be taken too literally, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which we are told that the Ark was a perfect cube. The cube would be a terrible container in a literal flood. It would overturn too easily too often, but those acquainted with symbolism should be able to figure out why the cube is the symbol of the Ark. There were also a few more on board Noah's Ark than just 8, but that number was chosen for certain mystical meanings and interpretations that I don't have time to get into today. The reason that the earth was destroyed was because it had become full of violence and idolatry and black magic and rape and theft and more. The Book of Jasher, a scripture mentioned in the Bible, yet suppressed from the masses, says that men destroyed the land to a degree where they could barely farm. It says that they instituted a damaging form of birth control for the sake of physical beauty, and that men hated their wives and treated them horribly if they didn't just outright ignore them. It says that there were bizarre tests of genetic engineering, which may be responsible for some, not all, of the odd variations of dinosaurs that we have found. The whole earth had become corrupt, and the only merciful thing to do to humanity would be to destroy it and start over again. Sometimes mercy needs severity to balance out. Make sure that you do not become guilty of these same sins: violence, rape, idolatry, theft, black magic, harming the earth, abusing your wife, and sacrificing birth for beauty, lest you provoke a righteous God to wrath, and you are gotten rid of in order to prevent the further pollution of our brotherhood and our planet. There were multiple floods, and the fourth was the biggest one that finished the job. However, the Atlantean colonies were falling apart, and many had already sunk before Noah built the Ark. The details of this story are long and complicated, and I recommend that you read the Book of Jasher and also the Book of Enoch to become more acquainted with what actually went on. Both books are written under a filter, of course, but they contain inspired words that will help shed light on much more than just the story of Noah. Those who are captivated by the astronomical and astrological symbolism in Masonry should take special interest in the Book of Enoch because of the odd treatises on the luminaries and workings of the heavens. Noah was also the father of a patriarchal lineage that still exists today, but that is too much to get into now, and so I would recommend starting out with Lawrence Gardner's book, Genesis of the Grail Kings. Noah was also supposedly the transmitter of the 7 laws to which the earth should endeavor to follow. The Gentiles who lived among the Jews without undergoing circumcision or observing the ceremonial law were bound to obey the 7 precepts of Noah. Yet the Jews themselves also followed these laws in a more elaborate form. These 7 precepts for the earth are to renounce all idols, worship the only true God, commit no murder, be not defiled by incest, do not steal, be just, and eat no flesh with blood in it. We could all benefit by observing these precepts. Now let's begin digging deeper than the historical data and into the spiritual meanings. The Blue Lodge ritual puts the ark and anchor in the same category of emblems because they are related to the same concept. The divine ark is your anchor. The 8 classes of emblems in the Master Mason degree are important to comprehend for the perfection of the soul, and they are often given explanations that barely scratch the surface, but they point you in the right direction in which to investigate. Research and meditate on the emblems given in the 3rd section of the 3rd degree. We are told that the ark is emblematical of the divine ark, which safely wafts us over this tempestuous sea of troubles, and this ark spoken of is obviously invisible and one that not all people on earth are in. We are thrown around by the waves of the world and do not always have the resistance when a force pushes or acts upon us. We drown in the energies around us when we are not in the ark, and we are susceptible to be moved upon by forces within and without that are beyond our current control. We need to learn how to calm these raging seas and to have such command over the internal waters that we walk upon them. We ourselves need to be a protected Noah's Ark, rested firmly in the overshadowing bosom of El Shaddai, that is calm and contained when the waters around us rage. We can be at peace like Christ was when he slept on the boat during the storm, and finding that calm solace within the God within is the meaning of the protective and hope-giving ark. When we meditate, we begin to form that ark, that protected secret place within, and in it we can find rest. In the secret place in the heart, access through the mind's eye, is where you and God meet together, and is where we learn and experience, and this inner sanctum is where we receive the divine impressions to draw down on the trestle board for the day. This inner residence of the ark is our hiding place in God, and we should access it often if we wish to ascend beyond the restraints of this material flesh world. There is a meditation that one should do that involves getting into a deeply meditative state and then constructing an ark around you and covering it with astral pitch so that you have your own space and zone to work with. Covering this room in pitch is important because it helps seal up the sacred space and make it more suitable for deeper workings and fewer interruptions. Make sure you use a pitch made of pure light. Don't funnel nasty energies into the walls. Apparently, this was an ancient Kabbalistic meditation technique, one where initiates would create an inner ark through visualizations. The Rosicrucians have a modified form of it and also recommend creating an astral habitation to work in. Kabbalah and Rosicrucianism both have an influence on Masonic symbolism, and so our ancient brothers may not have been unaware of this ark meditation when they included the symbol of the ark in the 3rd degree. For it is not merely hearing the story of the ark that safely wafts us over this tempestuous sea of troubles. We must construct the ark within and fill it with the fruits of a well-spent life. I was told that there is a more comprehensive explanation of the meditation technique in a book that I have not been able to afford called The Jerusalem Stone of Consciousness, which I recommend even after reading only a few paragraphs. Just as there is the inner microcosmic meditation, so is there the outer macrocosmic meditation, which is applicable to group workings. When in lodge, build the same ark for all and mentally spread the pitch everywhere in your visualization, and this will help keep your lodge tiled from unwanted spirits and disharmonious energies that pass by. The first duty of creating a sacred space is to make sure that it is properly tiled, whether inside your heart or outside in a room. This is something that I would like you to start doing at your meetings. As your eyes are open for the lodge opening, Make that lodge room into a sacred space in your mind's eye. Imagine the whole room covered in white walls and floors. Imagine it into an arc. The lodge room is an arc, so cover it with the astral pitch of light to help bless the room and create a set-apart holy time of lodge. The wording, the gaveling, the officers, the invocation of the blessing of deity, the lighting of the lamps, and more are all ingredients in the sacred soup of an operation to open a lodge with higher energies. The Masonic opening is tailored in every way to open up a temporary sacred bubble through solemn ceremony. Help strengthen this bubble with light by visualizing the divine protection around the lodge during the opening. If everyone covers the room in a blessed sealant of light together, a very real effect happens in the spiritual atmosphere of the room. When you do this, let it flow from a pure heart and allow love and blessing to pour forth from you into the collective group and the lodge as an arc. Even if one person in the whole group projects this astral reality, it will have some good effect upon the brothers of the lodge. If we do it together, we can bring more light to our brothers by creating a truly sacred space full of the light of the Creator. The realization of what we're doing in the ritual and the proper participation from all members present, including those working from the sidelines, can help transform and uplift Masonry. When I was initiated into the Golden Dawn, there were some adepts in chairs whose specific duty it was to channel currents of energy and control astral light during the ritual. We need to be doing this too, but in a different form of tiling the lodge with light. When the junior deacon is doing his rounds, he should, more than others, be projecting light into the room and also be purging the area of unwanted residual energies through the powerhouse of his internal spirit. Together we can build an ark in the lodge and be saved from the profane forces that flood this world. The hidden meaning of Noah also takes on a sexual illusion at one level of interpretation. Noah is representative of the masculine seed and creative potency within the womb of the feminine supportive ark riding the waters. When the two are united, new life is birthed. The Bible says that the flood lasted 9 months, which is the same amount of time that a child is in the womb. When the waters recede, a new child of earth is formed. Us men have neglected and suppressed the feminine energy that this world needs for support, just like the waters of the Great Mother support this universe. Our world hasn't balanced the masculine and feminine pillars, and it is costing us just as if Noah's Ark was missing a few hundred support beams and external planks. If you can control your passions, I encourage you to be active with the Eastern Star, or Job's Daughters, or Rainbow Girls, or church groups, or other organizations to help strengthen and empower the female vessels in this world. Without the feminine supportive ark, we will all drown. The Bible has a level of interpretation to it that is sexual, especially when it mentions the burnt offering of orgasm. We are told that Noah was perfect in his generations, and while this may refer to genetic purity, it also has a level of it that speaks about the perfect generations of his generative organs. We too are taught in Masonry to have perfect generations when we are given an emblem of innocence and purity to cover our generative organ with. The true building blocks of our temple are crafted through sexual practices and/or a solitary refinement of sexual energies. But we, especially in this world, can easily be betrayed by our Judas, as spoken of literally in Acts 1:18. Noah was also betrayed by Judas when he got drunk and did something shameful that has been obscured in the wording of the Bible. Let that be a warning to you that alcohol can make even the most righteous of men become depraved. For more information on the sexual aspect of the blocks of our inner temple, I'd again recommend Philotas's book on esoteric masonry, or some of Samael Anver's lectures, although be especially careful with his stuff. He accidentally let something in him that has affected his work and writings. Noah was perfect in his generations, which means that his orgasms were not tainted by the violence of fleshly lusts, and it is through pure sexuality that we rise above the waters. Stay pure, and do not let the violence of pornographic lusts overpower your will to seek and retain the pure, bright light. Sexuality can be your liberator or your destroyer. It is up to you what you let it do to you. The Ark of Noah is also representative of the part of our body that preserves the fruits and creations of our previous incarnations into a new life. The Ark is the auric envelope of the causal body that survives multiple incarnations into flesh. This Ark preserves the same will, wisdom, and intelligence of the threefold, but also fourfold, spiritual self, and it is a vehicle for the unfolding spiritual soul of man. It is a vehicle of consciousness that has a variety of animal forces housed within it. Those who deny the reincarnation of souls will one day be shown the lives that they have lived. Some may say that the doctrine of reincarnation is opposed to Masonic symbolism because, for instance, Hiram passed from this life to the next, and the Blue Lodge lectures tell of the heaven beyond to which we will all go. And we will also hold funeral services talking about the passage to the Great Lodge and the land where our fathers have gone before us. Some will ask how reincarnation is compatible with the philosophy that speaks of an afterlife from whose bourne no traveler returns. These perspectives are all true, but it is better defined by the Royal Arch 4th degree of Mark Master, where the craftsman was ordered to return to the quarries to try again at making the right stone, instead of imposing and presenting the work of another to try to pass through the gates and get the wages of the beyond. We can go to the Great Lodge beyond and stop the cycles of reincarnation, but that is only when we present proper work that will pass inspection. After we die, we go to one of the compartments of the spirit world, also called Sheol, and continue to learn there and progress. After a certain period, we can return to Earth. Some people immediately go back to Earth when they die, like kids who die too young, but some wander and account for their actions in Sheol, before taking on a new body to try again at breaking free from these lower realms that entrap us, which we are all born into. People should not be excited about reincarnation, because it means that their current body won't birth and ascend, and that they'll have to try again. For some, that may be a good thing, because their current bodies are incapable of ascension, and they look forward to the future redemption of their souls in a new flesh. There are many currently in the Masonic Fraternity who will have to come back for at least one more round before they can escape the claws of the shadow of death and be united with their higher selves, or HGAs, which is the ascension and the birth into the eternal. It is nothing to be ashamed of, for very, very few people have broken the cycles of reincarnation and achieved enlightenment in the past tens of thousands of years. It is only as we enter the Aquarian Age that many of the spirits are beginning to break out of the life cycles of reincarnation and achieve the resurrection in their own lifetimes. Once we enter the Golden Age that the fully inaugurated Age of Aquarius starts off, there will be a mass amount of people who will receive the resurrection by the complete manifestation of the divine logos within. Humans have a body, soul, and spirit, and we can have the Word made flesh in our flesh when we draw down the Spirit to fill and take over and replace our souls and bodies. That new man of spirit is how we can stop reincarnating and settle down from our labors in the Great Lodge on high. We need to actually be born into that land from whose bourne no traveler returns. For most of the people who die on Earth have to come back for more time in the womb before being truly born. That new man is created at the death of the flesh. If you remain dominated by the lusts and passions and fears of the flesh, you'll be unable to walk in the spirit, and you may have to come back to Earth for another round or two to learn your lessons. As long as we remain on Earth for now, we remain perpetual fellowcrafts who labor in the quarries one by one until we stop rejecting the chief cornerstone and place it as the final piece of your temple, which will enable you to pass on to the Great Lodge. If you want to break free from the cycles of reincarnation, you need to build and complete your temple. The Masonic symbolic tools for building your own temple cannot be found in just the Blue Lodge, and you need to explore the York Rite symbolism, especially chapter and council, if you want all the Masonic keys to this holy science of reintegration. In the official Masonic funeral ritual, and in the Great Light itself, we are told to seek ye the narrow path and the straight gate that lead unto eternal life. And that path of purity taught by the legitimate mystery schools of all ages is how we can finish the cycles and continue preserved into this eternal life. Without eternal life, we get stuck in the cycles of decaying life. One of the ways that we achieve eternal life is through another application of the symbol of Noah's Ark. The flood is a mythical history that symbolizes death and rebirth. The Great Light tells us that it is impossible to enter the highest heaven without being born again. The mystery schools of all ages had a form of a rebirth ceremony with their candidates, and this latest Masonic incarnation of the ancient schools is no exception. The third degree puts us through a baptism without physical water, in which there is a change effected upon our lives. Most often in the mysteries, the rebirth ceremony was done with water as a baptism, especially in the Essene and Christian communities. They tried to use living, moving water when they could, but there have been authorized baptisms in contained water tubs. When the earth was baptized and the old nature went away, God preserved a people to inherit the land, just like there are righteous parts of you that will inherit the land of your flesh and soul, which are preserved when you die in a baptism. If you want to ascend, make sure that your new birth is in full accordance with the Logos, or else it will just be a temporary stepping stone that will have to die and get reborn again. We need to learn the art of daily rebirth if we want to live and truly be born. The Masonic Royal Arch 7th degree ritual also shows us that baptism and passing through the water is an important stage in the path of life. Well, that concludes this episode of the Esoteric Freemason Minute. I hope I was able to stimulate some deeper thoughts within you that will help you find safety in the divine arc. I'm sorry that I could not touch on more like the twin pillars that survived the flood, but they refer to the pillars of fire and water and have deeper meanings as well. One work that I recommend reading is the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which are partially written during the age of Atlantis by the builder of the Great Pyramid. They are works that were carved on imperishable stone found hidden in a chamber. The translation we have today is not completely accurate and has some modern stuff intertwined into it, as the author admits, but they are worth the investigation nonetheless. There are many more layers to Noahic symbolism, so do not stop your search here, especially because there is much more that I could not even touch upon, such as that the Hebrew name of Noah is 2 letters, Nun and Chet, and these represented the fish and life, respectively. I also recommend learning the deeper meanings of the Noahic myths and then reading the scripture with replaced words representing what they mean. An example would be Genesis 6. And Yahovah, our inner divinity, saw that the impurity or pollution of our mind was great in the body, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only impurity continually. Later, Yahovah says, I will destroy that corrupted mind, whom I have created from the image of the body, both the mind and the animal ego, and the creeping things, the perverted elements in our mind, and the fowls of the heavens, the distracting thoughts that fly in fantasy. I recommend doing this with all of Scripture as you begin to learn the deeper meanings. Write them out in a notebook and find out what the Scriptures actually mean when you replace code words with the forces they represent. Don't forget to seek that secret place in your heart. Spend time in that ark of refuge. It is there that you will receive further instruction and revelation from the most worshipful Master. Go and be blessed in the light of the Logos and the wisdom of Sophia.
All right, Brother Matt Chojnacki, always bringing a huge chunk of knowledge to the show. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. We're going to move right along into the famous Freemason of the week. This week is Frank Reid Horton, born July 17, 1896, in Pennsylvania, and he passed away in August of 1966. He was a United States educator, best known as the founder of the first national president of Alpha Phi Omega, an international service fraternity. If you were ever a member of Alpha Phi Omega, he was a brother. The founder was, anyway. He was also the Scout Executive Homestead District Council of Pennsylvania, 1927 to 1928. Horton taught history, government, and English at Cedar Crest College and Muhlenberg College, both located in Allentown, PA. He's the author of Poetry Writing and Appreciation, published in 1942. He was also an industrial accountant for Ingersoll and Rand Company. He joined the Navy in 1918, commissioned an ensign in 1919, and as an ensign served on the minesweeper USS Whippoorwill. Shortly after World War I, he received a World War I Victory Medal with minesweeper clasp. As the founder of the first national president of Alpha Phi Omega, he provided the leadership to extend the fraternity to 18 campuses and established the first national structure for the fraternity. Member of Sigma Alpha Epsilon, a social fraternity, Kappa Phi Kappa, an education honorary, and the Square and Compass, a Freemasonry college group, while at Lafayette. That's it for this week. Please find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Whence. You can check us out on Google Plus at the email address wcypodcast@gmail.com. Coincidentally, you can also reach me at that same email address, or you can reach me at admin@wcypodcast.com. If you are interested in doing a little trade, a Matchbox Lodge for something else, go ahead and shoot me that email. I'll be really excited to do a trade with you. In addition, please don't forget about the Midnight Freemasons. Myself and Brother Brian Shimeon are working on a whopper of a post that should get quite a bit of attention. I think you guys will all enjoy it. I cannot forget to mention TMR. Again, we're going to have our 53rd episode, and we're going to celebrate it by having a lot of fun on the show next week, so just a day or two after this releases. I hope you guys all tune in. Please check out Steve Harrison's book, Tales from the Craft. If you really liked Brother Steve's Freemason Minute, you have to check out the book. You will absolutely love it. You can get it on Amazon.com. Links to that will be in the show notes also. And he also wrote another great book called Freemasonry Crosses the Mississippi. So check them both out. I think you really will enjoy them. That's it for this week, guys. Stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.